Welcome to the Within Reach podcast, where we discuss things all on health, fitness, lifestyle, and mindset. I'm Steph.
I'm Roberta.
And I'm Maddie.
Let's get started.
A lot of people think that they have to diet time and time again and spend long periods in dieting phases in order to see progress. But something we want to discuss today is something that we really think more people need to understand, and that is that you actually only need to diet once to get the results that you're after. But so many people are stuck in these yo-yo cycles and seemingly trying to lose weight for 3, 4, 5, 6 years at a time, when if you just did it right the first time, you would not have to do it again.
Yeah.
And I just think that that concept is so foreign to people.
Yes, it is very foreign. I think it's because also, well, we love social media, but I think always seeing, I guess, low calorie food options and ways to make your food smaller, ways to make yourself smaller. I think it instills some sort of fear in people's brains to eat regular sized meals. So then they constantly end up feeling guilty when they're not, eating a decent sized meal. And so they're constantly, under eating for a very long time.
Yeah. And also as well, I think if people, even if they're not actively wanting to lose weight, their habits keep them in what you would call like a fat loss mindset. And so you always have this mindset of like wanting to lose weight or not wanting to gain weight. And that fear then creates habits based around a fat loss phase, even if you're not technically in one. And it just becomes this like cycle of shit, really, where like you get so consumed by it,
Yeah, it also sucks because it's something that you said it before, people just aren't educated enough, and they're not educated in the right way, so they don't know what they don't know, which is why we're here. And we're going to take you through why you only realistically need to diet one time or, multiple times, but in one big umbrella.
Yeah, it needs to be like a phase.
Yes.
And the thing is too, right, like just on your point, when it comes to dieting and not knowing, there's so much information out there that nobody knows. And it's interesting, like people say all the time, we don't have an information problem, we have an implementation problem. And I do agree with that. We definitely do have an implementation problem, but we also do have an education problem. And the reason for that is because of the fact that it's gone from people starting to learn and understand fat loss to all of a sudden having so much information thrown at them and not actually then being educated because there's too much for somebody to go through. It becomes overwhelming, and then you're not intaking any of the information anyway.
Yeah, so that actually leads to the first point, and that's why are people starting over in the first place? Why are they constantly in these dieting loops? And well, you already said the fact that people, again, it's not an implementation, it's that there's information overwhelm, and it almost feels like everyone's just trying to try a bunch of different things to like find something that sticks. And once, it doesn't stick because obviously a bunch of reasons why, but once they're not seeing progress, then they keep getting stuck in this loop of, okay, well, I'll try the next thing, and then, that's not working. Okay, well, then I'll go see a doctor and they'll, prescribe me weight loss meds, and, then it becomes this entire loop of you constantly, starting over because you're starting a new thing every single time.
Yeah, so that's a consistency problem, because something that we always say is the basics work, but the basics almost seem so basic that people don't want to try them. And it's wild to me because the basics are the easy things. The quick fixes are the hard things. Yet you guys are wanting to go and get these quick fixes. Like if we use the example of, a new trend on social media or low carb. Yeah, you know what? Let's use the trend of low carb, okay, as an example. So if you stuck to the basics and you were just okay with doing the boring shit, you would be able to retain some consistency. But then instead we go and try a low carb diet, which arguably is more restriction than just doing the basics of eating balanced meals. Or you go and try a keto diet, which is arguably more restrictive than the basics, because now there's other foods that you can't eat. Then you go and try the carnivore diet, which is even more restrictive because now you're not getting your fruits and veg and all of the other foods that you actually enjoy. And so we continue to lean into these things, these trends, these quick fixes, thinking that they're going to be the next thing that'll help me lose weight, but you're actually making it harder for yourself because you're creating more restriction and taking yourself further away from the basics, and then not trusting the basics, but you haven't actually tried the basics or stuck to them long enough. And the basics I'm talking about here are like eating balanced meals, having your fruit and veg, staying hydrated, getting enough sleep, and also learning and understanding what a calorie deficit actually looks like for you so that you know what is too much food and what's not enough food. Because we also hear all the time people go, oh, I'm eating less and I'm not seeing progress. But when you actually break down the amount of food they're eating in a week, they're eating a lot more than they realize. So there's just all these things, but I feel like it continues to lead towards lack of consistency because people aren't willing to just do the boring stuff.
Yeah, so yeah, it's aggressive dieting, fast and unsustainable results, and wanting something too fast, too quick. So then again, you reach for these fads. You've got, you know, like you said, lack of education and trust. You end up regaining that weight because all of these are unsustainable methods and unsustainable practices. And, you know, that's where the repetitive cycle comes in. So let's talk about why doing fat loss that way fails.
Yeah, well, it goes back to the point that I just brought forward before, which is that we're looking for something that doesn't align with your entire life. And I think like the way to visualize this, right? If I'm talking about, you know, restricting yourself or limiting this and limiting that and trying these fad diets and whatever the situation is, consistency, because you're trying to be too consistent because your plan is restrictive to begin with, all these things, right? So if we actually paint a picture of what's going on here and why these diets fail or why these things fail, I really think it comes back to the fact that people go in too hard with a headspace that things are going to be perfect this time around, and they don't cater for what their entire life looks like. So instead of finding a solution that allows you to eat out and go to events and not restrict yourself and have meals off plan and create a lifestyle around it, they just go to this quick, oh, I need to be really, really consistent. I need to stay on track and I need to do this and I need to do that. And then it just becomes overwhelming. And so you end up in this position where the things you're doing doesn't actually allow you to live your life. And then I find as well, people end up in this almost like devil and angel situation where you got your devil on one side of your shoulder, the angel on the other, and you're kind of toying with this, like, I almost think it's like tug of war in your mind of going like, oh, but I really want to live my life and I really want to enjoy my social life and I really want to do this and I really want to do that. Oh, but I also want results. So then people start thinking they can't have both. It's just one or the other. Mm-hmm. And I feel like this is where it becomes too hard for people to sustain.
Yeah, I also am wondering if it's almost, because then in that case, is the reason, do you think, that people are going for the fads and the quick fixes? Is it because you reckon they want things faster so that way they can get it out of the way and not think about it?
Yeah, absolutely. I personally believe that we have a problem where people aren't willing to be patient. So we have a problem with patience, and we have a problem understanding that shit does take time. And this doesn't just go for health and fitness. This is everything. Like if you look at every industry, every goal that anyone's ever set, you want everything yesterday. Like you want it quick. And so when you're in this position where you think you can get it quick, you're going to opt for that. But the thing is, a lot of people don't see this as a lifestyle and something to do for life. So it is definitely a situation of like, I want to diet, I want to lose 10 kilos, let's just get it done and then I can not worry about it anymore. But it doesn't work like that, because the other thing to be mindful of, the habits you have, let me rephrase. The result that you have right now is a direct correlation of the habits that you have. The result that you want is going to be a direct correlation of new habits that you implement. So if you go into a dieting phase thinking that you can create new habits, get to the goal, and then go back to what you're doing right now, that's where you're going to put weight back on. That's where you're going to be unhealthy. That's where it's unsustainable and you can't maintain it, because you're not seeing this in that view of, I actually just need to change my life forever. And not in a restrictive way, but just in a way of like, well, what I'm doing right now isn't serving me.
I actually completely agree with that. And something else that I've noticed as well in why these sorts of approaches fail is because people, when you're looking at your own goal and is it objectively in the goal, or you're just looking at your goal by yourself?
Yes, use subjective.
That's what. When you have subjective thoughts towards your goal, it's very difficult to take yourself out of it and look at things from a broader perspective. And so when you're in that goal, when it matters so much to you, you're going to be so much more emotional in your decisions and the practices that you put in place, as opposed to, for example, having a coach or like a financial advisor if your goal is financial.
Yeah, or a business mentor if you have a business, all the things,
yes,
right?
because not only does that person have the education and they have the resources and the years of experience, they also are looking at your case as exactly that. It's a case study, and here's the data, here's what needs to be done in order to get to your results. When you're the one in it, and like you said, you want things so bad, you've wanted these, especially when it comes to fat loss, people want this stuff for years before they properly make that change. When you've been wanting it for so long and you're not, let's just say, seeing progress immediately, you're going to be so much more likely to make a reactive decision, an emotional decision, and do something that's not going to benefit you in the long term, because again, you're not able to see things objectively.
Yeah, agree. And I say this all the time, but humans base decisions off emotion. And when you are in an emotional place, you don't usually think clearly as it is. And we do get reactive. And reactivity is one of the biggest things that holds people back, but it's also one of the things that keeps people stuck. So when it comes to the point on why people stay stuck and why they don't see results, it's a few of these points bled into one. And I think, like, as a summary for this specific part that we're talking about, it is that emotional state, reactiveness, and ability to regulate yourself when you are having a moment where you feel like things aren't going your way. It's patience and understanding that this is a lifestyle change you need to make for good. And the second you start seeing it like that, you'll actually enjoy the process more, because you're in a position where you realize that, oh, this is for the rest of my life. It's not just for now. And then that also leads into not being as restrictive, because you're not going to want to do something restrictive or something quick when you know that this is for the rest of your life. Something I have to say is I do feel like, in some regard, I personally feel quite blessed that I've gone through the things I've gone through because I've learned so much. But at the same time, I also went through those things very early on. And something else that I think holds people back and keeps them in these cycles is the fact that if you've had specific habits or patterns or thought processes or beliefs for years and you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, I think the longer you sit there, the harder it is to get out of it. And I just feel blessed that as a 26-year-old, I've already been through that shit and come out the other side, but I just couldn't imagine how hard it could be for someone starting their journey now, because the other thing they lack is confidence.
I actually completely agree with that, as for a lot of things, but that one resonates with me because I also feel very blessed to be in the position that I'm in, where, you know, when it comes to my health and fitness, I'm not reactive at all. You know, again, I have the education, the practices behind everything. And again, I see case studies all the time. So to me, I don't have that emotional response, but I know when it comes to other decision making in my life, it's exactly what you said. It's because you've lived your whole life having a specific thought pattern and specific, you know, beliefs and practices. It's so hard to not think that way.
Yeah.
And you have to actively push yourself to not believe those things.
Yeah. And something else I want to say, it's kind of like on topic but off topic before we move on. And I'm kind of talking directly to parents at the moment. And I think I want to say this because, being that I am about to have a baby, I'm starting to see things very differently again. It's weird. It's like, as you go through different milestones in your life, you see things very differently. And I also would say, be very careful of the sorts of things that you say in front of your kids and the sorts of things you show your kids, because the other thing we need to be mindful of, like what we're talking about right now, is why people start over, why approaches that you take fail, you being stuck in cycles, you being hard on yourself, you having a poor relationship with yourself, which covers really, you know, it covers most people that go through these things. And when there's then kids in the picture who are really impressionable, it's just very important that even if you're internally struggling and dealing with these things, you just try your best not to imprint that on your children. Because I think that when you look at fat loss as a whole, like, we know that obesity is a problem, not just in this country, but all over the world. And we know that weight loss is something that's so heavily talked about because I'm not going to give a percentage because I don't know exactly, but I know a high percentage of the population are considered overweight and want to lose weight. And it's something that I feel like every second or third person has as a goal. So it's so dense in, I guess, the population as something that people commonly struggle with. And then when we're bringing families and kids into it, just being mindful that that is also an impression that they might receive, and then they might have the same struggles when they're older, and it just becomes this constant cycle of if you can't get your shit together and then your kids can't get their shit together, and then all of a sudden we have all these problems. And I just think it's really important as well, as a bit of like a side note, to be very mindful that you do need to instill your trust in somebody who can actually help you, especially when there are kids in the picture, because what you don't want to do is have them take after you in the wrong ways and then have the same struggles that you do.
Yeah, I like that. I personally wouldn't have actually even thought about that. But then it makes me think of the influences I've had growing up and how that, shaped.
Because it does. It shapes you and it affects you. And it's just something I think about a lot now because, again, being blessed in my position, I'm so glad that I get to teach my daughter the opposite of what most people learn.
Yeah, I love that.
And I think that when it comes to the struggles that most women face with fat loss and feeling that they need to start over, I think if you're a mum, it's more important to get the help from the right people, because you just want to make sure that you can live your best life but also show up for your family and not do it in a way that is going to teach them the wrong things.
Yeah, I like it. So going back to the basics of what weight loss is, and realistically, if you're eating at a baseline of however many, even if we're taking calories out of the picture, you're eating at a baseline of a certain amount of food per day, and that's averaged out through the month, whatever that is, in order to achieve, weight loss and see the scale weight drop down, what you would need to do is reduce that by a certain percentage and then do that consistently over time, be able to make smart choices, smart changes when you need to in order to not plateau, see the scale weight drop down after a few weeks/months, depending on your timeline. Once you're happy with where you're at, you've seen the results you're wanting, then you just have to slowly go through the process of a reverse, which just means you're bringing yourself back to a nice baseline without losing any of the progress that you've made.
Yeah, I really like that. I'm going to be honest with you, very broad. And this is where people get stuck. And I know that we're going to cover this in more detail, which is why I know you've said it like that. It's like a very broad overview of like, this is the process. But the thing is, like, what I want to break it down bit by bit, because this is, I think, the first part with fat loss that people get stuck in is it's like, okay, well, if I know I need to eat less, which is the first part that you mentioned, it's like, what does that look like? How do I know? Da, da, da. And that's when all of this overwhelm comes in and confusion comes in. And I think the best way to break that down, because I know it's really hard to almost describe it when everyone's starting point is so different, I do feel like this is why it's so important to, before you even go into a fat loss phase, before fat loss is your goal, before you attempt to lose weight, before you do any of that shit, learn about calories and macros, learn about nutrients. And I think that's, if you really want to look at fat loss in an approach that's going to help you, I really believe that rather than just jumping straight in the deep end and trying to lose weight without having any direction whatsoever, just put the handbrake on for a second, and can you spend a couple of weeks doing some research, reading in, asking for help, getting a coach, learning about what fat loss actually looks like, learning about, like what are calories, what are macros, and learning how much you're currently eating. Because I'm telling you guys, if you knew that, and that's the only thing that you knew, it would help dramatically with the process of starting to lose weight. But I think that what happens is we jump to step 2 before step 1. Step 2 is, I want to lose weight, I'm going to start to eat less and move more and do all the things. But if we go to step 1 first, it's, okay, can I learn about what that looks like for me as an individual first, so that when I go to step 2, it's going to be sustainable and easier and I can see results, rather than, oh, I'm just trying to lose weight at the moment. But the word try, it's like, how are you trying to lose weight when you have no idea what you're doing? It's like, it's like driving to a location you've never been to without a map.
Yeah, my first major point was not restricting and eating at maintenance for long enough. So that's basically what you just spoke about, is ensuring that your baseline, firstly, you got to know what your baseline is.
Yeah.
You got to know what that is in the first place as well, why you need to do it. And I like that you said if you just knew that, that alone would change so many things, because no one knows, especially when they come into coaching, no one knows what maintenance is. Yeah, it's a fancy word of just like having a nice baseline where your body where your body just exists and lives and breathes without having anything fluctuate.
Yeah, there's no changes. You're basically just like maintaining your current weight, which is, because that's the first thing I have to say too, right? Like if you're right now sitting here and you're knowing that you're actively putting weight on, I can tell you you're overeating, like straight up. That's what it is. If you're somebody right now and you're like, yeah, I've been wanting to lose weight for a little while and my scale weight's just kind of stayed the same. Very good indicator you're eating at maintenance, which means you're eating roughly the same amount every single week. And the first step is to get that right first. So if you're putting weight on consistently, getting your intake to maintenance will be the first step. If you're at maintenance, finding out what your deficit calories are is the next step. And so the reason that I wanted to bring that up as like a point, the first point, is because then your next point in your description was then you want to reduce the amount you're eating by a certain percentage. How do you know the percentage if you don't know how much you're eating? So if you can learn about calories, you can learn about macros, you can understand what your current intake looks like, and you can just, as I said, put that handbrake on short term and actually understand these things before you decide to go into a fat loss phase. One, it's going to stop you from getting frustrated and feeling like it's your fault, because you're going to know more first and you're not going to feel like you're going in blind. But the second thing is when it then comes to dropping yourself into a deficit, it's going to be a lot easier to manage, because you'll know, okay, well, if Steph and Roberta have told me I need to do a 10 to 15% deficit, which that's actually true, if it's your first time dieting and you're doing it on your own, I would say a 10% deficit is what you want to do. You're not going to know what 10% equals if you don't know what the starting point is. So if you can go, okay, well, I'm learning that I'm roughly eating about 2,000 calories a day. What's 10% of that? Yep, cool. All right, sweet. So I need to eat X amount to be able to, and that will help you, because now what we're doing is we're taking away that fear of the unknown. We're taking away that emotion. We're taking away that confusion. And we're actually doing a step-by-step approach on these are the things you need to do to see progress.
Yeah, so let's just say you put yourself through that process. You're now in a calorie deficit. You now need to know what to look for in order to ensure that you're seeing progress and staying on track, but also doing it sustainably. So take the floor, please, and let me know what you think people need to be looking out for when they're seeing scale weight drops. Like what's normal, what's average?
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's start with the fact that you need to be tracking your progress. Like that's the first thing. And a lot of people are tracking their progress, so they think, but it's just scale weight. And the amount of conversations we have with women who are like, oh, I jumped on the scales and my scale weight's gone up and it's gone down and I'm losing weight. No, I'm not. And they're in their heads about the scale weight because it's the only form of measurement they're tracking. Please, guys, track your photos and your measurements as well. So for photos, it's like literally just like put your camera up. I like what you do with our clients. You say just do self-timer. And just stand in front of the camera with your hands by your side, take a photo, then turn to the side, take a photo, then turn to the back, take a photo. It takes 3 seconds, right? But it will give you an ability to see your body physically changing over time, because it is true that you can see fat loss but still have the scale weight not change too much. And if you're too busy focusing on the scale weight, you're not even going to realize that your body's changed. The other thing is measurements. It's easy to say, take some measurements. Okay, well, what does that look like? I would be getting a tape measure and measuring around your waist, the smallest part of your waist, measuring around your glutes, or if, glute growth and that sort of thing doesn't matter to you, maybe do it around your thigh. That's always a good thing. And those 2 measurements are honestly enough. That's all you need to do. And that just helps paint a bigger picture so you can see changes happening on a regular basis. But coming back to something we spoke about before, it's also really hard to pull the emotion out of it when you're doing your own progress updates, which is why I think having a coach is so good, because we get to take that emotion out of it, that reactiveness out of it, and only make changes when we need to. But then when we talk about like the rate of fat loss, because the other thing is it's like, oh, I've been dieting for 3 weeks and it's not working. Oh, okay, well, have you seen any results? No. Well, what are you tracking at the moment? Oh, just my scale weight, but it keeps going up and down. Okay, first mistake. You're only tracking the scale weight, and you're probably getting on the scale weight at all different times of day, every single day, obsessing over it, not helpful. And this is where self-sabotage happens. But in terms of the rate of fat loss, what we want to be looking at is general rule of thumb, and please be so mindful with what I'm about to say. It is so generalized that it's going to be different from person to person. But as a blanket statement rule of thumb, if you're losing anywhere from 250 grams to about a kilo a week, you're in a really good spot. The other thing I have to say too is your current body weight will determine your rate of fat loss. So someone who's leaner naturally, who's not carrying as much body fat, they're going to lose weight slower. It's just how it works. Someone who is carrying a little bit more body fat, who's maybe a little bit bigger, they're going to lose weight quicker. And so you also can't compare your rate of fat loss to the person next to you, because if you have someone sitting next to you that's 90 kilos, 100 kilos, has quite a bit of weight to lose, and they're losing a kilo, maybe sometimes even 1.5 kilos a week, but that's what is normal for them, because the more body fat you have, the more easy it is for your body to let go of that fat. That's in layman's terms, versus being super lean and only seeing 250 grams of scale weight. What I would say as a blanket statement, if you're losing anywhere from 250 grams to 1 kilo a week, you're in a really good place regardless. If you're losing more than that, you might be too restrictive, and you might be in a position where maybe you're eating a lot less than you should be, and I would maybe actually bump your calories up a little bit. If you're not seeing scale weight progress at all, and you're tracking your measurements properly, and you're not being reactive, and you're not blowing out on the weekends, all circumstantial, at that point you'll know that you're probably just not in a strong enough deficit.
I also think it's important to recognize, so firstly, yes, what your scale weight is as opposed to someone of a higher scale weight. Obviously the percentage is going to be different and seeing that drop, but also your previous dieting history.
Agreed.
So that's another thing to keep in mind, is another reason why comparing your rate of fat loss to someone else's is not going to benefit you at all. You just have to stay mindful that everyone's body is going to respond differently, and you need to just keep that dieting history in mind.
Yeah, agreed. Because the other thing is too, like if you've got someone who's maybe 90 kilos, 100 kilos, and they have always overeaten, they're going to easily be able to lose body fat in a deficit versus someone who's been undereating to begin with. So this is where it's all relative, and this is where it can get a bit confusing. And that's why we sit here and you'll notice we'll say something, but then we'll back it up with a just be mindful of this, just be mindful of that. Because unfortunately, it isn't always just black and white. And this is why I know so many people struggle with fat loss, but why I once again think that you need professional help with this. And I say this all the time, like I don't think anyone should be dieting by themselves. I don't even think coaches should diet by themselves, because there's just too much to think about. There's too many I can't even think of the word, but there's just too many things.
Nuances?
Yeah, nuances in it. And there's too many elements that we have to consider. And I just think that it's very hard for somebody to do all of that by themselves without being reactive. So there is like a process, but then at the same time, it's like, well, if you're not seeing results, why do you continue to try and do it on your own?
Yeah, so considering there are so many elements to be thinking about, one major thing, and I'm bringing this back to what you said before, is maintenance, how important it is, and how if people knew more about this phase, educated themselves on it, it would actually solve so many problems for your dieting future.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the thing is, like, if you want to look at fat loss black and white, and let's take the nuances out for a second, like let's just strip away all the shit we've just spoken about and do the black and white version. You need to know what your maintenance is. Then you need to be able to drop into a minimum of a 10% calorie deficit. Then you need to be able to maintain that deficit through exercise and nutrition. And then you want to track your progress, and then you want to see results. That's very black. That's easy. Like you're like, oh, okay, cool. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, done. All right. But the problem is that we have people that haven't spent time at maintenance, that have already been under eating, don't realize they are, or maybe they do realize they are, have been in start-stop cycles, have done this, have done that. And all of a sudden that process goes from step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 to step 1.25 and step 3, and then it's back to step 2, and fuck, I don't know what I'm doing, and it should be working, but it's not working, and now I'm going to go get a fucking weight loss injection and blah, 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 right? But what Roberta's saying here is, if we just spent time at maintenance first, which is almost step 0, to be honest, because I was saying step 1 is learning what your calorie intake is, and then step 2 is going into a dieting phase. Let's go back a step further. Let's go to step 0. Spend some time at maintenance, because that is where beauty happens, and that's when fat loss actually uncomplicates itself.
And also the thing is, once you've reached your goals, right, and this circles back to how to even just do the fat loss phase one time only, is if you do all of those steps that Steph's just talked about, you need to be able to get yourself back into a maintenance. Otherwise, that's where those loops come in, where you're constantly eating low calorie foods, eating teeny tiny portions, and not feeling your best, not fueling your body properly, and then just fucking your metabolism up.
Yeah, literally. Because the thing is too, like, you want to eat at maintenance first so that you know what your dieting looks like, but also so that your body is prepared for dieting. When you go through the steps, what I hear a lot from women is they go, oh, but you know, I've been eating 1,500 calories and I've lost 20 kilos and now I guess I'm just going to have to keep eating 1,500 calories to maintain it. That's the incorrect part, because people think that what they've done to get the fat loss is what they have to do to maintain it. But what you've done to get the fat loss is what you do to get the fat loss, not to maintain it. And this is where, and we have so many, this is getting a bit complicated now, but so many people that think that once the diet's over, it's over, and it's not. This is where we need to slowly build our way back to maintenance and actually learn that you can eat more and maintain the results that you had as long as you have a process for it.
Which is where coaching comes in.
That's exactly where coaching comes in, because I think that's the other thing too, right? A lot of people think that, oh, I'm going to get a fat loss coach and going to help me lose weight and whatever. Well, it's not actually what we do. Like, it is, but it's not, because we need to identify all these things we've spoken about today. But on top of that, we also need to teach you how to then get back to eating at maintenance and maintaining your results. And a lot of people don't even think that's possible. But that's why you have professionals in the industry that's the job. Like, this is literally our day job. And this is why, you know, like, I wouldn't go to a dentist to ask them how to fix my car, or I wouldn't go to a mechanic to ask them how to, you know, fix the sole of my shoe.
I also wouldn't go to a dentist, ask them to fix my tooth halfway, show me how to do it, and then I'll go and do it myself.
Oh my God, I fucking love that.
Like, I just was like, nah, like,
but that's the thing. Yeah. That's the thing, right? Like, this is the problem. It's people, and this is why I always say don't diet on your own, because as easy as it is, it's also quite complicated based off of where you're at right now, and people fuck themselves up and then try to get help later. And you are so right. Yeah, you wouldn't go to a dentist and say, hey, just show me how to start. Start the filling for me. Oh, no, I'm good now. I'll go do it myself. But people do that with weight loss. They go, oh, yeah, like, I'm going to do a coaching program for 8 weeks or 12 weeks. And you show me a little bit. Oh, I know what to do now. I'm just going to go out and do it myself. Or they go, nah, I'll just try it myself from the beginning. That's like me going, you know what? I'm just going to go and build a house by myself right now. No experience. And then they wonder why they can't do it. Well, it's because, guys, you don't have the skills, and it's okay that you don't have the skills, but ask for help from the people that have the skills. And then you don't have to keep doing this repetitively and constantly being in the cycle of losing weight, not losing weight, and then not being happy with your process. Because the thing is, like, women will for the rest of their lives go through this. I am serious. I know women in their 60s and 70s who are still wanting to lose weight. I know women, and some of these women are family members that I love them, but, you know, they're in their 60s, their 70s, and they're always talking about, oh, I need to go on a diet and I need to lose weight. And I'm like, how long have you thought like that for? Like, have you been thinking about this your whole life? Because I'm telling you now, like, I don't know about you, but I don't want to be in my 70s wishing that I could lose weight and not doing it because I didn't get the help I needed when I was in my 20s or 30s. And when it comes back to dieting right and doing it the first time, if you're somebody, especially for those in your 20s and 30s right now, because that's our demographic, that's the type of women we work with, and it's the women that I see struggle with this the most. If you just took a year or two to invest in some help, to invest in a coach, to learn things, you know, God forbid you don't even have to invest in a coach, just take some time to learn, to research, to watch YouTube videos, to follow people that have reputable advice. Like, if you just took the time for that period and you stopped trying to rush things and you just gave it a proper go and did it right, you're setting yourself up for the rest of your life versus flip-flopping about for the rest of your life and then getting into your 70s and wishing that you look different and having regrets over not or thinking that, oh, my age is now the reason I can't lose weight. Like, there's always a reason. And I feel like that alone would solve a lot of problems. So anyway, Roberta, I know that you planned this episode. I have no idea if this is the direction you wanted to take it in, but sometimes I like this because I feel like we can both just talk openly about what comes to mind at the time. And I hope that it gave people insight, a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of understanding, but more so perspective over why you're probably stuck right now.
Yeah, and I hope it has sparked some thoughts in yourself as well as to where you're, where you're confident with knowing certain things, but what gaps are missing for you to then go and, research them, have a think about them, and really properly think about what it's going to take you to get to the goals that you need to be.